The Dallas Love Field Airport buzzed with the usual energy of travelers. Among the crowd, a tall, composed young man quietly made his way through the terminal. 17-year-old Barron Trump was no stranger to public scrutiny, but he'd mastered the art of blending in. Dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, he carried a discreet backpack over one shoulder and clutched his first-class boarding pass tightly in his hand. Today was supposed to be uneventful. A routine flight back to Washington, D.C., after visiting friends in Texas. At the gate, Barron approached the boarding queue for first-class passengers. He waited patiently as others scanned their tickets and stepped onto the jet bridge. When his turn arrived, he handed his boarding pass to the gate agent with a polite smile. The agent, a middle-aged woman with a sharp, scrutinizing gaze, paused as she looked at his ticket. "Excuse me, young man," she said, her tone hesitant. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" Barron blinked, taken aback but still courteous. "Yes, ma'am, it's mine." The agent glanced at him, then at the ticket again. "Priority boarding is for first-class passengers only." "Yes, I'm aware," Barron replied evenly, gesturing to the ticket. "That's why I'm here." Despite his calm demeanor, the agent's suspicion only deepened. She narrowed her eyes, as though trying to reconcile the understated teenager in front of her with the expensive ticket he held. Several passengers nearby had begun to notice the interaction. Their interest piqued. I'll need to verify this," the agent announced abruptly, stepping away with his ticket. Barron stood frozen for a moment, aware of the eyes now trained on him. He could feel the weight of judgment in the air, a familiar sensation that came with his name, even when unspoken. Minutes ticked by. When the agent returned, she was accompanied by a supervisor, a stern man with an air of authority. "We need to ask you a few questions," the supervisor said. His tone wasn't accusatory, but it was firm enough to make Barron feel cornered. "What kind of questions?" Barron asked, his voice measured but edged with confusion. The supervisor ignored the query, motioning for him to step aside. "Just routine protocol." Barron's heart sank as he complied. His instincts told him this was far from routine. Barron followed the supervisor to a small area just outside the gate, where several passengers had stopped to watch. Phones emerged from pockets, their lenses capturing the scene. Despite the mounting tension, Barron kept his composure, unwilling to let frustration or fear dictate his actions. "I don't understand," he said, addressing the supervisor. "My ticket is valid. If there's an issue, I can provide identification." The supervisor nodded curtly. "We'll need to verify everything. Please remain here." Barron offered his passport, which bore his unmistakable name and photograph. But instead of resolving the situation, this seemed to complicate matters further. The supervisor frowned as he examined the document, then stepped away to confer with the gate agent. The whispering among passengers grew louder. A few murmured about celebrity treatment, while others speculated on Barron's identity. Some even began live streaming the incident, their captions ranging from curiosity to outrage. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Barron remained standing, his tall frame stiff with unease. Finally, the supervisor returned, his expression unreadable. "We'll need to conduct further verification," he said. "Please come with us." Before Barron could protest, two airport security officers appeared, flanking him on either side. The sight of the uniformed guards was enough to elicit gasps from the watching crowd. One passenger shouted, "What's going on? He's just a kid." Others began questioning the airline staff's motives, their voices blending into a cacophony of opinions. Barron swallowed his frustration, his pulse quickening as he followed the officers through the terminal. He couldn't shake the feeling of humiliation washing over him. Every step felt heavier than the last, as if he were walking into an unwarranted interrogation. Behind him, the spectacle continued to unfold, with passengers snapping photos and videos of his retreating figure. He was led into a stark, windowless room far from the bustling terminal. A single table and a few chairs filled the space. One of the officers gestured for him to sit, while the other stood guard by the door. Barron exhaled slowly, trying to maintain his composure. He felt the absurdity of the situation. His identity was no secret, and his documentation was irrefutable. Yet here he was, isolated and treated like a suspect. Unbeknownst to him, the videos circulating on social media had already reached Melania Trump, igniting a firestorm that would soon change the trajectory of the day. Miles away, Melania Trump sat in the back seat of her black SUV, scrolling through her phone. She was en route to Dallas Love Field Airport, her heart light with anticipation. The plan was to surprise Barron and travel back to Washington together. It had been weeks since she'd seen her son, and she missed his calm, thoughtful presence. Her thoughts were interrupted by a series of rapid notifications. She glanced at her phone to find several texts and links to social media posts from friends and aides. The texts were alarming. Is this Barron? What's happening? Melania checked Twitter now. Confused, she tapped on one of the links and was immediately met with a shaky video recorded by a bystander at the airport. The footage showed Barron at the gate, surrounded by airline staff. His tall frame stood out, his expression calm but clearly frustrated. The caption read, "Rich kid drama or unnecessary harassment, teen pulled aside by staff at Love Field. What's the deal?" Melania's stomach tightened as she played the video again. In another clip, the camera zoomed in on Barron being escorted by airport security. The murmurs of the crowd were audible. Who is he? This is ridiculous. He's just a kid. Her heart raced as she opened more videos and saw the incident escalating. The humiliation on her son's face, the judgment in the crowd's whispers. She couldn't bear it. A protective instinct flared within her. "Step on it," she instructed the driver, her voice firm and resolute. "Yes, ma'am," the driver replied, increasing speed. She made a quick call to her aide, demanding updates. "I need someone to contact the airport now. I want to know exactly what's happening with my son." Her tone was sharp, brooking no argument. While waiting for a response, she returned to the videos, her concern morphing into steely determination. She wouldn't let this slide. Not for Barron, not for anyone. Inside the stark, windowless room, Barron sat with his arms crossed, his patience thinning. The cold metal chair beneath him did little to calm his nerves. The two airport security officers stood by the door, occasionally exchanging murmured words he couldn't make out. He glanced at his phone, but it had been confiscated. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. He replayed the events in his mind, struggling to understand how something as straightforward as boarding a plane had spiraled into this farce. "Can someone tell me what's going on?" he asked, his tone clipped but still respectful. "We're verifying your identification," one officer replied curtly. "I've already provided my ID," Barron said, gesturing to his passport on the table. "What else do you need?" The officer didn't answer, his expression unreadable. Barron exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair. He wasn't just frustrated. He was hurt. The implication that he didn't belong in first class, that he had somehow done something wrong, stung deeply. This wasn't just about a ticket. It was about being judged without cause. Outside the room, Melania Trump arrived at the airport. Her presence was unmistakable, her tailored coat and sleek boots exuding authority. Heads turned as she strode through the terminal with purpose, her assistant trailing behind. She approached the information desk, her voice firm but calm. "I need to know where my son, Barron Trump, is being held. Now." The attendant blinked, startled by the intensity of her request. Let me check, ma'am," he stammered, typing hurriedly into his computer. As Melania waited, more bystanders began to recognize her. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some pulling out their phones to record. She ignored them, her focus solely on finding Barron. "Ma'am," the attendant said finally, "security has him in a private room for further questioning. I can escort you there." "Take me now," Melania said without hesitation. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she followed the attendant through the terminal. Every step amplified her resolve. The image of Barron's face in those videos was burned into her mind. She would not let this affront to her son's dignity go unanswered. Meanwhile, inside the room, Barron's head snapped up as the door opened. His heart lifted momentarily, thinking the ordeal might be over. But instead of an explanation, he was met with more silence as another officer entered and exchanged hushed words with the others. He sat back down, biting back the urge to voice his growing frustration. "This is absurd," he muttered under his breath. Unbeknownst to him, Melania was just steps away, her presence about to turn the tide of this harrowing day. The sterile corridors of the airport echoed with the steady, determined clicks of Melania Trump's heels. Her face was calm but stern, her sharp eyes focused on the airport attendant leading her to the private room. As they neared the door, she caught sight of a cluster of staff members standing awkwardly nearby, security personnel, gate agents, and supervisors. They looked uneasy, whispering to one another. Melania didn't break stride. When they reached the door, she turned to the attendant. "Open it," she said in a tone that left no room for argument. The door creaked open, revealing Barron sitting stiffly in a metal chair, his passport and boarding pass still on the table in front of him. His head turned, and relief flooded his face as their eyes met. "Mom," he said, his voice a mix of frustration and comfort. Melania stepped inside, her sharp gaze sweeping over the officers in the room. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice even but laced with steel. "Ma'am, we were conducting a routine verification," one officer began, but his words faltered under her unrelenting stare. "Routine?" she repeated, her tone incredulous. She gestured toward Barron. "You have my son, who has provided both a valid first-class ticket and his passport, held in this room as if he were a criminal. Is this how your airport treats all passengers, or is this some special protocol for my family?" "Ma'am, we didn't realize," the officer stammered. "You didn't realize who he was?" Melania interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "You didn't need to. He provided everything you required to confirm his identity. Instead of following proper procedure, you chose to humiliate him in front of other passengers." "Why?" The gate agent who had initiated the incident entered the room hesitantly, her face pale. "It was a misunderstanding," she said weakly. "A misunderstanding?" Melania snapped, her voice icy. "You created a scene, called in security, and held my son in this room without justification. That is not a misunderstanding. It is incompetence." The staff exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence crumbling under Melania's commanding presence. She crossed her arms, her expression unyielding. "I want answers, now." Outside the private room, a growing crowd of passengers and airport personnel had gathered, their curiosity piqued by the unfolding drama. Many were still watching videos of the earlier incident, sharing them on social media with hashtags like "Justice for Barron" and "Airport Fail" trending within minutes. Inside the room, the senior airport official arrived, summoned by the urgency of the situation. He was a tall, imposing man in a suit, but even he faltered slightly under Melania's piercing gaze. "Mrs. Trump," he began, his tone conciliatory, "I deeply regret this incident. I assure you this was not our intent." "Regret is not enough," Melania replied, her voice cutting through his attempt at diplomacy. "Your staff publicly humiliated my son without cause. This is not about intent. It is about accountability." The official nodded, his discomfort evident. "We are reviewing the footage of the incident now," he said. "It's good," Melania said sharply. "And when you're done, I expect an apology, not just to my son, but to every passenger who witnessed this disgrace." The official hesitated. "A private apology would be more appropriate," he suggested cautiously. "No," Melania said firmly, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. "The humiliation was public. The apology will be public. Bring your supervisor and gather your staff. This apology will take place at the gate, in front of everyone." The official sighed, but nodded, recognizing there was no arguing with her. He stepped out of the room to make arrangements. Barron, who had been silent for most of the exchange, looked at his mother with a mix of admiration and gratitude. "Mom, you don't have to." She turned to him, her expression softening. "No, Barron, this is not just for you. It's for anyone who has ever been treated unfairly. They need to understand that their actions have consequences." Minutes later, Melania stood at the gate, flanked by Barron and a visibly nervous group of airport staff. The senior official stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly as he addressed the crowd of onlookers and reporters who had gathered. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we sincerely apologize for the incident involving Mr. Barron Trump. It was a failure on our part to handle the situation with the professionalism and respect that all passengers deserve. We deeply regret the distress caused and take full responsibility." The apology was met with murmurs of approval and scattered applause. Melania stepped forward, her presence commanding. "Respect and dignity are not privileges, they are rights," she said, her voice steady and clear. "What happened to my son today was unacceptable, and it reflects a larger issue. We must treat everyone with fairness, regardless of their name, appearance, or background. I hope this serves as a lesson for all of us." The crowd erupted into applause, some even cheering. Cameras flashed as passengers captured the moment, turning it into a symbol of accountability and justice. Barron stood beside his mother, his shoulders relaxed for the first time that day, knowing she had turned a painful experience into a powerful statement. The buzz in the airport terminal grew louder as the senior airport official adjusted his tie nervously and stepped up to address the crowd at the gate. Behind him stood the gate agent and supervisor responsible for the incident, their faces pale with apprehension. Melania Trump and Barron stood to the side, poised but resolute, their presence commanding the room. Dozens of passengers and bystanders, some holding their phones up to record, waited to see how this drama would unfold. The official cleared his throat, his voice unsteady, as he began. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to personally apologize for the incident that occurred earlier today involving Mr. Barron Trump. This situation was mishandled, and our actions were both inappropriate and unnecessary. We failed to show the professionalism and respect that all passengers deserve, and for that, I take full responsibility. He gestured toward the gate agent and supervisor, who stepped forward reluctantly. The gate agent spoke next, her voice shaky. I want to apologize to Mr. Trump and his family for my actions. I made assumptions I shouldn't have, and I deeply regret the distress I caused. The supervisor added, I take full accountability for not handling this matter with the care and discretion it required. We are committed to ensuring this does not happen again. The murmurs in the crowd were a mix of approval and skepticism. All eyes turned to Melania as she stepped forward, the room falling silent. She addressed the passengers, her voice steady and resonant. My family and I have experienced something today that no one should ever have to endure. While my son has been offered an apology, this moment is bigger than us. It is about the principle of treating every individual with dignity and respect, regardless of their name, status, or appearance. She paused, letting her words sink in, then continued. We live in a world where assumptions and biases can lead to unfair treatment. Today was a reminder of the importance of holding ourselves accountable and striving to do better. Let this be a lesson, not just for those involved, but for all of us. Kindness and fairness are not optional. They are essential. Her heartfelt statement was met with a wave of applause, some passengers even cheering in agreement. A few people in the crowd shouted, "Well said," and "Thank you." Barron, standing quietly beside his mother, felt a swell of pride. While the day had been humiliating and frustrating, her strength and eloquence had turned it into a moment of empowerment. As the crowd began to disperse, passengers approached Melania and Barron, offering words of support and solidarity. One woman, a grandmotherly figure with kind eyes, stepped forward hesitantly. "Mrs. Trump," she said softly, "I want to apologize too. I stood there and watched it happen, but I didn't speak up. I should have. Your son didn't deserve that." Melania smiled gently, placing a reassuring hand on the woman's arm. "Thank you for saying that. It's never too late to stand for what's right. The fact that you're here now means a great deal." Barron nodded, his confidence restored by the genuine outpouring of support. "Thank you," he said sincerely, appreciating her courage. Despite the airline's attempts to offer them special treatment, upgraded seating, complimentary meals, and even private boarding, Melania politely declined. "This isn't about compensation," she said firmly to the airline official. "It's about accountability and principle. What's important is that you learn from this and ensure it doesn't happen again, to anyone." As she and Barron waited for their rescheduled flight, they found a quiet corner of the terminal to reflect. Melania scrolled through her phone, reading countless messages of support on social media. The videos of her speech at the gate were going viral, sparking conversations online about bias, respect, and fairness. Barron sat beside her, deep in thought. "Mom," he said after a long silence, "do you think this will actually make a difference? Or will people just forget about it tomorrow?" Melania turned to him, her expression thoughtful. "Change doesn't happen overnight, Barron," she said. "But every action we take, every conversation we start, plants a seed. Today, we reminded people that standing up for what's right matters, and that's how progress begins." Barron nodded, her words resonating deeply. While the day had been challenging, it had also been transformative, a powerful reminder of the strength found in standing firm against injustice. As they sat together, the tension of the day began to lift. For the first time since the ordeal began, Barron felt a sense of peace. He realized that what had started as a humiliating incident had turned into something much more meaningful, a moment of growth, unity, and hope for a better future. As Melania and Barron waited for their rescheduled flight, the atmosphere around them began to shift. What had started as an upsetting ordeal now carried the weight of a broader message, one that resonated far beyond the airport walls. Passengers who had witnessed the incident began approaching cautiously, offering words of encouragement and sharing their own experiences. A young man in a business suit came forward, his phone still in hand. "Mrs. Trump, I wanted to thank you for what you said out there. I travel a lot for work, and I've seen situations like this happen to others, people who didn't have anyone to stand up for them. Your words meant a lot." Melania offered him a gracious smile. "Thank you for saying that. The real change comes when people like you take a stand, too. It's not just about my son. It's about fairness for everyone." The conversation sparked a flurry of social media activity. Melania decided to take the opportunity to share her reflections. She opened her phone and began typing a post. "Today, my son faced an unfortunate incident at the airport, one rooted in assumptions and biases. While this experience was difficult, it reminded us of the importance of treating everyone with dignity, no matter their name, status, or background. Respect is a right, not a privilege. Let's strive to do better, for ourselves and for one another." The post immediately gained traction, shared by followers and picked up by news outlets. Comment sections filled with discussions about accountability and fairness. People from all walks of life chimed in, recounting their own stories of unjust treatment. Barron, sitting beside his mother, scrolled through the comments. "Look at this," he said, showing her his screen. "There are so many people sharing their stories. It's like what happened to me made them feel seen." Melania placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's the power of speaking up, Barron. One voice can inspire others to find theirs." As they continued to wait, a journalist approached cautiously, asking for a quick interview. Melania declined politely, explaining that this wasn't about making headlines, but about spreading awareness. She wanted the focus to remain on the larger message, not the fame of her family. Barron listened quietly, absorbing the lessons his mother was imparting through her actions. The frustration he had felt earlier now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by a growing understanding of how moments of adversity could be transformed into opportunities for growth and change. Finally, after hours of waiting, the announcement came. Their flight was ready for boarding. This time, there was no tension, no questioning, and no hesitation. Airport staff escorted Melania and Barron respectfully to the gate, ensuring everything was in order. As they walked, passengers who had witnessed the earlier events nodded or smiled at them in solidarity. At the boarding gate, the senior airport official stood waiting. He greeted them with a formal apology once more. "Mrs. Trump, Mr. Trump, on behalf of the airline, I want to reiterate how deeply sorry we are for what happened today. We've already begun reviewing our protocols to ensure this doesn't happen again." Melania acknowledged him with a polite nod. "That's what I want to hear. Change, not just apologies. I trust you'll follow through." As they stepped onto the plane, the flight crew greeted them warmly, clearly briefed on the situation. Barron took his seat beside his mother, leaning back with a deep sigh. For the first time all day, he felt completely at ease. The plane began taxiing down the runway, and Melania gazed out of the window, reflecting on the day's events. While it had been an ordeal, she was proud of how she and her son had handled it. She turned to Barron and spoke softly. "You know, experiences like this can teach us a lot about ourselves and others. The way we respond to challenges shows who we really are." Barron nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I get that now. It's not just about standing up for yourself. It's about making things better for everyone." Melania smiled, placing a hand over his. "Exactly. And today you showed strength and grace in the face of unfairness. I couldn't be prouder of you." As the plane ascended into the clouds, Melania allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. She hoped the day's events would resonate not just within the airport, but beyond, sparking conversations and inspiring others to stand against injustice. For Barron, it marked the end of a long and challenging day, but also the beginning of a deeper understanding of the values his mother had always taught him. courage, respect, and the unwavering belief in doing what is right. Together, they had turned a moment of humiliation into a powerful lesson, one that would stay with them and many others for years to come. The events of the day at Dallas Love Field Airport became more than just an isolated incident. They transformed into a powerful story about resilience, accountability, and the importance of standing up against injustice. What began as a humiliating experience for Barron Trump turned into an opportunity for reflection and growth, not only for him, but for everyone involved. Melania Trump's unwavering grace and strength reminded those watching, both in person and online, of the fundamental values of fairness and respect. Her words and actions inspired others to examine their own assumptions and biases, sparking a dialogue that extended far beyond the airport walls. For Barron, the ordeal taught him that adversity could be met with dignity and resolve, and that even in moments of vulnerability, there is an opportunity to make a difference. Together, he and his mother demonstrated the importance of using one's voice to challenge injustice and create positive change. As the plane soared above the clouds, it carried more than just passengers. It carried a message of hope and a renewed commitment to treating every individual with the respect and dignity they deserve. In the end, the day's challenges became a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and the belief that standing up for what's right can truly make a difference. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story. We hope it inspired you, reminded you of the importance of respect and fairness, and showed how even the most challenging moments can lead to growth and positive change. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more like it, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. We'd also love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below to share what you think or your own experiences. Together, we can continue spreading messages of kindness and empowerment. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you in the next story.